You are listening to the Information Security Innocent Podcast, episode number 1, originally released on April 1st, 2020. My name is Josh Amishav. This week, we'll discuss some InfoSec news, privacy tips for working from home, as well as an OSINT tip on how to search LinkedIn privately. Direct support for this podcast comes from BreachSense, the data breach monitoring platform. Integrate BreachSense's powerful yet easy-to-use API into your existing security solutions to prevent account takeover and stop online fraud. So with the coronavirus forcing everyone to work from home, Zoom has become the de facto standard for video conferencing. Now, Zoom claimed to use end-to-end encryption, but it turns out their definition of end-to-end encryption is not what you would think. Companies like Wicker or Wire or Signal use end-to-end encryption to allow folks to communicate with each other. Although the traffic passes through their servers, the end-to-end encryption means that those services only facilitate sending the messages, but are unable to decrypt it, meaning your secrets are safe once they leave your device until they reach their destination. Zoom, on the other hand, as it turns out, has a very different definition of what end-to-end encryption means. When communicating using Zoom, the data is encrypted when it leaves your device until it reaches the Zoom servers. This is sort of the way TLS or SSL works in your browser. Your traffic's encrypted until it gets to the server where it's decrypted and the contents can be read. Now, what makes this more troubling is that most of Zoom's engineering team is based in China, and they don't have a great history for protecting user data, like the recent issue where they leaked email addresses belonging to users with the same domain. So domains like google.com or yahoo.com were blacklisted, but if you used your ISP's provided email address, you could see all the other Zoom users registered with the same domain name. Also, Zoom shared user behavior with Facebook and allowed them to track you even if you didn't have a Facebook account. Another example of their questionable privacy practices is the attendee tracking feature, which notifies the meeting host when an attendee's Zoom window isn't highlighted, meaning that they're doing something else. Now, without true end-to-end encryption, Zoom has a technical ability to spy on private video meetings. They could voluntarily or be forced to give recordings of meetings to governments or law enforcement. Other companies like Google and Facebook or Microsoft, they publish periodic transparency reports that describe exactly how many government requests they had and which countries requested the data and how they actually complied with those requests. Zoom, on the other hand, doesn't publish any data. We have no insight into how user privacy is being abused and how prevalent it is. For many of us, using Zoom won't be a choice. Your employer may demand it, or your kid's school is using it for teaching, and you're just going to have to use it. So I want to talk about how to handle that from a privacy perspective. Ideally, when working from home, you want to separate your personal stuff from your work stuff. So in a perfect world, your employer assigned you a dedicated computer or laptop and a phone for everything work-related. In reality, though, you're probably going to have to mix the two to some extent. Now, the cleanest way to do this is by setting up a dual boot computer. There's plenty of documentation how to do this online, but essentially, you condense your hard drive and create space for a second operating system. You update the master boot record, and when you boot the computer, you'll be presented with an option of which operating system you want to boot up. Now, to avoid confusion, it's probably a good idea to set up your secondary operating system using a completely different OS altogether, meaning if your base OS, if you're using Windows or Mac now, so put a Linux operating system as a secondary. If you are already running Linux, then perhaps try a different flavor or use a different Windows manager so you're able to differentiate the two easily. Now, if setting up a dual boot system isn't possible, so you can use a virtual machine. I like VirtualBox, which is free, but you can also use VMware, which is a bit more powerful, but it also costs more. Another option is to use a bootable USB stick or CD. You can download a Linux ISO file like Ubuntu and copy it or burn that to the USB stick, update your system BIOS to boot from the USB or CD, and then boot up from there into your Linux OS. The virtual machine or bootable USB or CD option works great if you just want to do things like send email or browse the web. They're going to be slow, though, if you use it for video conferencing software like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. There's going to be a lag. That's why the dual boot option works best. Another issue with bootable USB or CD options is that any changes you make, like installing software or making configuration changes, are going to be lost when you reboot the system. On the flip side, I personally heard of and read about a number of Zoom bombings or video conference hijacking incidents. If you're going to host a Zoom meeting, there are a couple of things you can do to prevent this. So first, don't make the meeting public. In Zoom, there are two options to make meetings private. Either require a meeting password or use the waiting room feature and control which guests you let in. Second, when relevant, you should configure the screen sharing options in Zoom to host only to prevent attendees from sharing their screens. And finally, don't share Zoom conference links on public social media, like Boris Johnson just did, who tweeted a screenshot of his cabinet meeting which leaked the meeting's private ID number. Instead, provide the links directly to specific people. Okay, that's enough about Zoom. I want to talk about today's OSINT tip. When I'm pen testing and testing for credential stuffing attacks, I need to create a list of valid usernames. And this is equally relevant for red team or even business development when you need to find your target's email address. There are a number of sources that you can use to find email addresses. Now, you're probably familiar with things like Hunter.io or scripts like The Harvester or Simply Email, but you could even query domain name or email address on sites like breachsense.io to see the email format for your target or company and look up, or you can look up a specific user when that user appeared in a data breach. Another option is to use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Up until recently, you can use their Chrome plugin and just create a new email and put the address in the to field, and then that would verify if the address is correct. As of last month, the plugin no longer works. However, you can still query the LinkedIn Sales Navigator API directly in your browser. So you open up your browser and access www.linkedin.com/sales, SALES/Gmail, GMAIL/profile, PROFILE/view by email, VIEW, capital B, lowercase y, capital E, lowercase MAIL, / and then the email, like user@domain.com, and that will tell you if the email is valid or not. I'll put that in the show notes, so if you didn't catch that, you can just reference that. But if your target's business email is associated with their LinkedIn account, then that'll work great. But if they registered, or if their email account is their personal email in their LinkedIn profile, then it may be less relevant depending on what your end goal is. Now, while on the topic of LinkedIn, Dutch OSINT guy from OSINT Curious recently put out a great tip on how to view profiles anonymously. Depending on the profile settings, LinkedIn will notify your target that you viewed their profile. So you could use a sock puppet account, but you may be giving out too much information. So this technique lets you view your target's profile without any notification. And another benefit of this is if you're collecting data for an investigation, this lets you archive the profile's HTML as it was on the day that you did the investigation. So to do this, using your search engine of choice, search for your target's name or nickname, and then the word LinkedIn. And one of the first few results will be a direct link to their profile. So you right-click on that and click on Copy Link Location, and then in another tab, browse to search.google.com/test, TEST/mobile-friendly, MOBILE-FRIENDLY. Okay, and then you paste in the direct URL that you copied and click Test URL. You'll get a message that the site is mobile friendly. Now on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a screenshot of the target's profile, but you can't scroll down to see all the details. So instead, click on the HTML link right above that, and then click on the copy icon to the right of that. And now you can archive the HTML for your target's LinkedIn profile. One caveat to note, though, is if you view the HTML, your browser is going to send LinkedIn image requests, which may or may not have OPSEC implications, so just be aware of that. One way to bypass that, and perhaps we'll talk about in the future, is to use a VPN. In any case, in another tab, you want to open up codebeautify.org. That's CODEBEAUTIFY.org/HTML viewer, HTML VIEWER. And then you paste the copied HTML from the previous step and click Run. Now you can view the entire rendered profile without notifying your target. Okay, to summarize today's show, while working from home, consider using a dual boot machine when you have to install questionable software that your employee or your children's school requires. If that's not possible, try a virtual machine or a bootable USB stick. If you need to search LinkedIn anonymously, use the Google mobile-friendly search function to get the HTML and then use Code Beautify to render it. That's it for today. If you have any feedback or questions, please email me at podcast@breachsense.io. And if this provided you value, then subscribe and tell a friend.